My wife said her dad chose assisted living, then a contractor marked our porch for a ramp. The first promise I ever made to my father-in-law was that I would never make him feel like a burden. The last promise my wife made him was that moving into our house had been my idea. Only one of us knew she had said it. Frank Delaney had spent 34 years treating me like a son from the day I married his daughter. He taught me how to sharpen a mower blade without ruining the edge. He stood beside me at my mother's funeral when I could not remember the names of people shaking my hand. And every Thanksgiving before he carved the turkey, he asked me to taste the gravy, not because he needed help, but because he knew being asked mattered. Frank was 87 now. His knees had slowed him down. A fall in his laundry room had added a cane to his life and a metal rail beside his bathtub. But he still balanced his own checkbook, made it to the diner on Tuesdays, and corrected the weather forecast from a radio older than my marriage. So when my wife told me he had chosen assisted living, I believed the word chosen. Then at 7:18 on a Wednesday morning, a contractor drew 3 blue lines across our front porch and told me Frank was moving into our house on Sunday. If you value stories where the truth arrives through one ordinary detail, take a second to subscribe and tell me where you are listening from. Because those blue lines did not just mark a ramp, they marked the exact place where my marriage stopped making sense. My name is Thomas Mercer. I was 64 that morning, and I had been married to Frank's daughter, Linda, for 33 years. For most of those years, I thought being a patient husband meant giving difficult conversations more time. What it really meant was that Linda learned she could make a decision while I was still waiting to discuss it. The contractor's truck was white with Harbor Home Access printed across the door. I was pouring coffee when I heard a power drill on the porch. By the time I opened the front door, a man in a gray work shirt was kneeling beside our bottom step with a tape measure stretched to the driveway. 2 blue chalk marks crossed the brick. A third sat on the porch post at knee height. "Morning," he said. "Thomas Mercer?" "Yes." He stood and offered his hand. "Miguel Santos. We're doing the access ramp and handrail. I wanted to confirm the turn before my crew unloads." I looked past him. A second man was lifting aluminum sections from the truck. "You have the wrong house?" Miguel checked the number beside our door, then the page clipped to his board. 14 Willow Lane? That's the address. It's the job that's wrong. He turned the board toward me. The top line read, Mercer Residence. Below it was a rough drawing of my porch. The work order listed a 6-foot modular ramp, double rail, non-slip landing, and removal of the hydrangea beside the driveway. At the bottom, under special instructions, someone had typed, "Must be complete before resident arrives Sunday, 10 a.m." The resident's name was Frank Delaney, my father-in-law. The authorization line carried Linda's electronic signature. I read it twice because the first time my mind refused to hold the words in the right order. 6 days earlier, Linda and I had sat at this same kitchen table while she told me Frank had paid a deposit at Brookside Commons, an assisted living community 15 minutes from his apartment. She said he had chosen a small suite near the garden because 2 men from his Tuesday diner group already lived there. I had asked whether he was sure. Linda had said, "He's 87, Tom. He knows what he needs." Now a crew was preparing our porch for his arrival. "Please don't unload anything else," I told Miguel. He did not argue. He raised one hand toward his coworker, who lowered the aluminum section back into the truck. "Mrs. Mercer said the downstairs room was ready?" Miguel said carefully. "She approved the final estimate Monday." The downstairs room was my den, not a grand room, 1 desk, 2 bookcases, an old recliner, and the radio I used for baseball games. But Linda had not asked me to empty it. She had not even mentioned Frank staying overnight. The shower stopped upstairs. Linda had heard us. I carried the clipboard through the front door and stood at the bottom of the stairs. "Linda?" She appeared on the landing in a navy blouse fastening one earring. Her eyes moved from my face to the paper in my hand. She did not look surprised. That was the first answer. "There's a contractor outside," I said. "I know. He says your father is moving into our house on Sunday." She came down 3 steps and stopped. "The ramp is modular. If Dad doesn't need it later, it can be removed." "That is not what I asked. Tom, we don't have time to turn this into one of your 2-hour discussions. You told me he chose Brookside. He changed his mind. When? Over the weekend. And when were you going to tell me that he changed his mind about where he was going to live?" She descended the remaining steps, took her purse from the entry table, and checked the time on her phone. "Tonight," she said, "when you were calm." A ramp is being installed now. Because the company had a cancellation. If I waited for you to be comfortable, we would lose the slot. Miguel was visible through the open door. He had moved away from the porch, giving us privacy he should never have needed to give. Did Frank ask to live here? I said. Linda put her phone into her purse. My father needs help. We have a downstairs bathroom and your den can hold a bed. Brian says he can't take him. What exactly do you want me to do? Answer the question. She looked directly at me. Dad is coming Sunday. I have an agency call at 11 and I'm already late. Then she walked past me and out the door. She paused beside Miguel only long enough to say, my husband has questions. Give him a copy. Her car backed out of the driveway at 7:31. The blue marks remained. Miguel stood with his clipboard against his chest. Mr. Mercer, I can reschedule the crew. Don't reschedule them, I said. Stop the job. He nodded once. No lecture, no pressure, no demand that I decide before I understood what I was deciding. He gave me the work order, photographed the existing porch for his cancellation file, and had his co-worker reload the equipment. Before leaving, he rubbed one blue line with the side of his boot. It faded, but it did not disappear. I called Brookside Commons at 7:46. The woman who answered introduced herself as Monica Bell, Resident Services Coordinator. Linda and I had met her during Frank's tour 2 weeks earlier, so she recognized my name. I'm trying to confirm Frank Delaney's move-in, I said. There was a brief pause. Mr. Delaney isn't scheduled to move in. He paid a deposit. He did. The reservation was canceled Tuesday morning. By Frank? Her voice became professional. I can only discuss the details with Mr. Delaney or someone he authorizes. That's fair. Can you tell me whether the suite is still available? Not without speaking to him first, but I can call him today. That answer told me more than Linda had. I thanked Monica and called Frank. His home phone rang 6 times, no answer. His cell went to voicemail. I called Brian, Linda's younger brother. He picked up, but the moment I mentioned the ramp, his breathing changed. Tom, I'm going into a meeting. Did you know your father was moving into my house? Linda said you two had worked it out. When did she say that? Sunday night. She told me Frank chose Brookside. Silence. Then Brian said, I really can't do this right now. You are already doing it, Brian. You're just doing it silently. He hung up. At 8:12, I got in my truck and drove to Frank's apartment. He lived in the same red brick building he and his wife Ruth had moved into after selling their house 12 years earlier. Frank's cane was hooked over the back of a chair when he opened the door. He wore a pressed plaid shirt and the old watch Ruth had given him on their 25th anniversary. Behind him, 3 cardboard boxes stood against the wall. One was labeled Tom's Den. You're early, he said. For what? He frowned. The shelves. On his dining table was a sheet of paper titled Sunday Move Checklist. Linda's handwriting filled every line: medications, clothes, bathroom supplies, radio, photo albums, cane tips, charger. Beside it sat a folder from a home care agency and a small suitcase already zipped. Frank followed my eyes. Linda said you wanted the room cleared before the bed came, he said. I told her I didn't need all this fuss. What exactly did Linda tell you? That Brookside wasn't the right fit, that you said family takes care of family. He smiled faintly. I knew you'd say something like that. I had said those words once, years earlier, when Ruth needed meals after surgery. I had not said them about Frank moving into my house. Did you cancel Brookside? I asked. Frank's smile disappeared. Linda said she handled it after you offered the room. Did you ask her to? He looked toward the boxes. I told her I needed another week to think. She said the suite would not be held forever. Then on Sunday she called and said you had already decided. Decided what? That I would stay with you for a while, maybe longer if it worked. The room felt smaller. On Frank's refrigerator, beneath a magnet shaped like Ohio, was a photograph of the Brookside garden. He had circled a bench in blue ink and written Tuesday cards beside it. Do you want to live with us? I asked. He lowered himself into a chair. That's not a yes or no question. It should be. I want help when I need it. I want breakfast when I want breakfast. I want Brian to stop calling me the situation. I want Linda to stop lowering her voice every time she talks about me. He tapped one finger on the table. And I want you to tell me why you look like someone just moved into your house without asking. I sat across from him. There are lies that collapse the second they meet the two people they were designed to separate. Linda's collapsed at 8:39 that morning. I didn't offer the room, I said. I learned you were coming when a contractor started marking my porch for a ramp. Frank stared at me. His first expression was embarrassment. That hurt more than anger would have. He looked toward the suitcase as if he had packed his dignity inside it by mistake. Then his eyes sharpened. She told you I chose Brookside? Yes. And she told me you chose this? Yes. Frank reached for his cane, stood, and walked slowly to the shelf beside the window. He lifted his radio with both hands. A strip of masking tape crossed the top. Linda had written Sunday, front seat on it. He peeled the tape off, folded it once, and placed it in his shirt pocket. Don't call her yet, he said. Why? Because if we call now, she'll explain each sentence separately until none of them sound like a lie. He returned to the table and slid the home care folder toward me. Call the woman in there. Elena Brooks. Linda brought her Tuesday. I want to hear what I supposedly agreed to. That was the moment Frank stopped being the subject of our family's argument. He became the person directing it. If this story has you thinking about the difference between helping someone and controlling them, subscribe now and share your answer in the comments. When does care stop being care? Elena Brooks answered at 9:05. She was a licensed care manager who helped families compare home support, transportation, and residential options. Frank put the call on speaker and gave her permission to discuss the assessment with both of us. Elena sounded relieved to hear his voice. Mr. Delaney, I was planning to call this afternoon. I didn't receive your signature on the home plan. Frank glanced at me. What home plan? The proposed setup at your daughter's house. Mrs. Mercer said you would occupy the downstairs room and that the family had agreed to overnight care 3 days a week for the first month. Did I say that? No, Elena said. You said you wanted to review all options. That is why I left the signature page blank. Frank closed his eyes for 1 second. What did my daughter say after you left? She called and asked whether the plan could begin Sunday. I told her I needed your consent. And did she have it? Not from you. Frank thanked her and ended the call. He did not raise his voice. He did not insult his daughter. He simply opened the Brookside brochure, found Monica Bell's card, and placed it beside the phone. I want to see the suite again, he said, without Linda answering for me. I called Monica. She spoke to Frank directly. The original suite had been offered to someone else after the cancellation, but a 30-day respite suite had opened on the second floor. He could tour it Thursday morning. If he liked it, he could use the month to decide whether Brookside suited him without giving up his apartment. Frank chose 9 o'clock. Then he told me to go home. You shouldn't be alone today, I said. I have been alone since 6 this morning, Tom. I was fine until everyone started deciding where I belonged. He softened when he saw my face. Come back tomorrow. We'll look at the place together. What about Sunday? He touched the folded strip of tape in his pocket. Sunday is still moving day, he said. I just haven't decided where I'm moving. I drove home past 11 with a copy of the unsigned care plan on the passenger seat. The blue chalk on the porch was visible from the street. I was not furious. Fury would have been easier. Fury burns through itself. What I felt was the cold realization that Linda had built two separate realities and expected me and her father never to compare them. Thursday morning, I woke at 5:56. Linda's side of the bed was empty. I found her in the kitchen wearing the same robe she had worn the morning before, staring through the glass door at the porch. Miguel says you canceled the ramp, she said. I stopped work. No one asked me to approve. Dad needs safe access. Frank doesn't use a wheelchair. Not yet. The words hung there. Not yet. An entire future used as permission for a decision today. Linda poured coffee but did not drink it. I spoke to Dad last night. He sounded upset. Did he tell you why? He said you came over and confused him. Is that what he said? Or what you needed him to mean? She set the mug down hard enough to spill a little over the rim. Tom, you have no idea how much I have been handling. Then tell me one thing clearly. Did your father choose Brookside? She looked at the coffee spreading across the counter. He agreed it was an option. That isn't what you told me, because every conversation with you becomes a trial. Did he ask to live here? He needs somewhere safe. That isn't what I asked. Brian won't take him. That isn't what I asked. She folded a dish towel over the spill and pressed down with both palms. It was complicated. There it was, a soft word asked to carry the weight of several hard choices. I placed the unsigned care plan on the counter. Linda saw Elena's name at the top and went still. I'm taking Frank to Brookside at 9, I said. You went behind my back. No. I went around you so I could speak directly to the man whose life you were arranging. You're making me the villain because I'm the only one willing to do the work. You ordered a ramp for my house, promised my room to your father, canceled his deposit, and told each of us the other had chosen it. Her eyes lifted to mine. I did what was necessary. Then you should be able to say exactly what you did without hiding any part of it. She had no answer. I picked up my keys. Where are you going? To hear what Frank wants before somebody changes it for him. I left at 7:48. Frank was dressed for the tour when I arrived, navy blazer, gray trousers, cane polished, radio playing low on the kitchen counter. The boxes had not moved. He handed me a yellow notepad. At the top he had written, "My questions." Below it were 8 lines. Can I keep my own doctor? Can I leave when I want? Who decides if I need more care? What happens to the deposit? Can friends visit after dinner? Is transportation optional? Can I bring my radio? Who speaks for me, if I can still speak? The last question had been underlined twice. That's the one, he said. Brookside Commons was a 3-story building around a courtyard. Monica met us in the lobby. She addressed every question to Frank, even when I could have answered. He noticed. The respite suite was smaller than his apartment, but bright. It had a private bathroom, a low shelf for his radio, and a window facing the garden bench he had circled in the photograph. 2 men were playing cards in the common room down the hall. One of them, Earl Patterson from the Tuesday Diner Group, called Frank's name and accused him of avoiding a rematch. For the first time in 2 days, Frank laughed without effort. Then Monica showed us the cancellation record. She did not hand me the paper. She handed it to Frank. The original deposit had been charged to Frank's card during the first tour. At 10:11 Tuesday morning, Linda had called and said her father was moving in with family. Brookside had refunded the deposit to the same card. No signature had been forged. No law had been broken. Linda had simply used the authority everyone assumed a devoted daughter should have. That made it harder, not easier. Frank sat at Monica's desk with the cancellation record in front of him. "My daughter loves me," he said. Monica waited. "She also thinks love gives her an extra vote." He asked for 15 minutes alone with me. We sat in the courtyard. The morning was cool, and the metal bench held the last of the night's dampness. Frank remained standing until I wiped it with my handkerchief. Then he lowered himself beside me. "Your mother needed help near the end," he said. "Yes." "You moved her into your house for 7 months?" "Linda and I did." "Did you both want to?" The honest answer took a moment. "We both wanted her safe. We did not always want what it required." He nodded. "That's different. My mother's last months had not destroyed our marriage, but they had exposed every weak seam. Linda and I had agreed afterward that we would never bring a parent into our home without a real plan, outside help, and 2 unpressured yeses. Frank knew that. She remembered what it cost you," he said, "and she decided your no would mean you didn't love me." "I never said no." "She made sure you didn't get the chance." He looked through the glass doors toward the lobby. "This did not start with the ramp, Tom." Then Frank began counting. In March, Linda had canceled his Thursday grocery trip and started ordering food to his apartment because she said the parking lot was unsafe. In April, she had taken his car keys after his fall and told Brian the doctor had forbidden him to drive. The doctor had actually recommended a driving evaluation. Frank passed it but never got his spare key back. In May, she moved his bills to online payment because 2 envelopes were late. One had been delayed by the post office, the other had sat under a magazine. In June, she told his church friend Howard not to pick him up on rainy Sundays. She said Frank had requested it, he had not. In July, she told Brian their father did not want overnight guests. She told Frank that Brian was too busy to visit, and in August, after the laundry room fall, she started speaking to nurses while Frank was still answering their questions. "Every one of those things can be explained," he said. "That's how this happened. Each one sounds small when it stands alone. Why didn't you tell me? Because she is my daughter. Because she lost her mother and became afraid of losing me. Because I thought if I pushed back, she would hear ingratitude instead of a boundary." He tapped the cane once against the pavement. "And because I was embarrassed." "You have nothing to be embarrassed about." "I let convenience take pieces of my life because arguing made everyone uncomfortable. That is something to learn from, even at 87. He took the folded strip of masking tape from his pocket. "Sunday, front seat." She packed my radio before she asked where I wanted to hear it. At 10:42, we went back inside. Frank asked Monica to call Elena Brooks and put her on speaker. For the next hour, the three of them compared the respite suite, his apartment with scheduled home visits, and our house with the modifications Linda had proposed. They discussed meals, transportation, physical therapy, medication reminders, emergency response, cost, and what would happen if his mobility changed. No one spoke for Frank. He rejected our house first. Not because I don't love my daughter, he said, because a marriage should not become a care plan one spouse signs for the other. He kept his apartment. He chose the 30-day respite suite at Brookside beginning Sunday. During that month, Elena would arrange 2 visits to his apartment and help him decide whether returning home with part-time support was realistic. He added Brian as a second contact, kept Linda as his emergency contact, and asked that any change in living arrangements require his direct confirmation while he could provide it. Then he signed his own name. Monica gave him the pen, the original, and a copy. He read every page before closing the folder. "I'm not cutting Linda out," he told me in the parking lot. "I'm putting myself back in." "When are you telling her?" "Sunday morning. Frank, she needs to know before then. She knows there is a decision. She simply believes it belongs to her." I did not like keeping Linda in the dark, but for the first time the information was Frank's to share, and the timing was Frank's to choose. At 12:37 I drove him home. He unpacked the box labeled Tom's Den. Not everything, just the radio and his photo albums. He left the suitcase closed. Before I left, he gave me a folded page from Elena's care plan. It was the section titled Family Goals. Linda had written one sentence in the margin. "Dad needs to feel this was his decision." Frank had circled the word feel. "Keep that," he said, "not as ammunition, as a reminder." Linda did not call once that afternoon. She did not ask how the tour went when I returned home. She sat at the dining table with her laptop open and said she had moved the home care intake to Friday. "Frank canceled it," I said. Her fingers stopped above the keyboard. "Why would he do that?" "You should ask him." "I have asked him. He keeps saying he wants time." "Then give him time." Time is how older people get hurt, and panic is how families take over. She closed the laptop. "You're enjoying this?" That accusation surprised me. Enjoying what? Being the calm one, standing beside Dad while I look unreasonable. "You get to ask gentle questions because I have been handling the pharmacy, the appointments, the insurance calls, the groceries, and the versions of the truth." Her face tightened. "You have no idea what is coming." Neither did I. There was a contractor on my porch before breakfast. She stood, took her laptop, and went upstairs. The bedroom door closed softly. Friday passed with almost no conversation. At 4:20 that afternoon, Miguel emailed confirmation that the ramp order was canceled and the deposit had been returned to Linda's card. I printed the email and placed it beside the original work order. 2 plans, 2 refunds, 2 destinations canceled or approved, without the people who lived there agreeing. Saturday morning, I helped Frank pack for Brookside. He chose 1 suitcase, 6 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, a framed photograph of Ruth, his crossword books, and the radio. He did not pack the silverware, furniture, winter coats, or anything that made the month look permanent. "A trial is a trial," he said. Brian arrived at 10:15 carrying 2 empty boxes and an expression that said he expected judgment. Frank handed him coffee. "Sit." Brian sat. "Did Linda tell you Tom invited me to live with them?" Frank asked. Brian stared into his cup. "She said it was settled." "Did she tell you I had chosen Brookside?" "She said you refused it." "Did I tell you not to visit?" Brian's head lifted. "She said you were tired after the fall." "For 2 months?" Brian's face changed. That was the third reality collapsing. He admitted Linda had asked him whether Frank could stay at his house. Brian had said no because both bedrooms were upstairs and his wife was recovering from knee surgery. Linda told him Tom and I had volunteered, so he stepped back. He had not known about the ramp, the canceled deposit, or the unsigned care plan. "I should have called you," Brian said. "Yes," Frank replied. "No cruelty, no rescue from the truth, just yes." Frank told him about the 30-day stay. Brian offered to drive him Sunday. Frank declined. "Tom is taking me. You can bring the radio." Brian looked relieved to have one clear job. At 11:48, Linda called me. I let it ring while Frank chose which photograph of Ruth to pack. At 11:52, she called again. At noon, she sent, "Where are you?" At 12:06, "Did Dad sign something?" At 12:11, "Monica won't discuss it with me." Frank read the messages over my shoulder. "Good," he said. "She has learned one boundary." By 1 o'clock, I had 9 missed calls. At 1:20, Linda called Brian. He stepped onto the balcony to answer. Through the glass, I watched him speak for less than a minute. When he returned, his face was pale. "She knows about Sunday," he said. "What did you tell her?" Frank asked. "That she should talk to you." Frank nodded. "Another boundary." We drove to Brookside at 2 o'clock to bring over the suitcase and test where the radio would work best. Frank sat in the passenger seat with the folder on his lap. My phone lit up again in the cup holder. "Linda, call 11. He watched it stop. "You can answer," he said. "Not until I know what I'm going to say." That's more consideration than she gave either of us. In the respite suite, Frank put Ruth's photograph on the bedside table and the radio on the low shelf. He tuned it until a baseball pregame show came through without static. Then he sat in the armchair by the window. "This might not be home," he said, "but it can be my decision." I sat across from him. "Are you doing this to prove a point? At my age, proving points is an expensive hobby. Then why Brookside? Because I like the garden, because Earl cheats at cards and I intend to catch him, because I can try it without surrendering my apartment. And because if I move into your house now, every difficult day between you and Linda will have my name on it." He looked toward Ruth's photograph. "Your marriage should survive or fail on the truth between the two of you. I will not become the hidden test she gives you." My phone buzzed again. "Call 12. Frank waited until it stopped. "I need you to understand something," he said. "Linda is not heartless, she is frightened. Fear doesn't make the ramp honest. No. But if you decide she lied because she does not love either of us, you will be telling yourself a simpler story than the true one." "What is the true one?" She watched her mother lose choices very quickly. Ruth went from a hospital room to a nursing facility in 11 days. Linda still believes that if she had acted sooner, asked better questions, chosen another place, she could have changed how those months felt. I knew that grief. I had lived beside it. But I had never understood that Linda had turned it into a rule. Act before anyone else can make the wrong choice. "She is trying to outrun the day I become her mother," Frank said. "And she does not see that in the running she has stopped asking whether I am still myself." He leaned back, tired now. "Understanding is not permission, Tom. Remember that. You can understand why someone crossed a line and still require them to step back over it." That was the center of it. Not punishment, not victory, a line. "What do you want from her tomorrow?" I asked. The truth without the word complicated. And from me? The same thing. We left the suitcase in the room and returned to his apartment. At 4:05, my missed call count reached 14. I told Frank I would see him at 8 Sunday morning. "Bring coffee?" he said. "Brookside's tastes like it was filtered through a sock." I had one hand on the doorknob when he stopped me. "Tom, what are you going to ask her?" "Why she lied." "That question invites a defense. You already know the defense. She was afraid." "Then what should I ask?" Frank thought for a moment. "Ask what she told each of us. Ask what she believed would happen if she let us answer for ourselves. Then ask what she is willing to change now that the plan failed." 3 questions: fact, fear, choice. I wrote them on the back of the ramp order. "And if she avoids them?" I asked. "Then you will have an answer about more than Sunday." He picked up his coffee and looked toward the window. "Do not punish her for being afraid," he said, "but do not protect her from the cost of what fear made her do." I folded the work order and put it in my pocket. For the first time all day, I knew exactly what the coming conversation was for. I was not going home to win. I was going home to find out whether the truth could exist in the same room with my wife. When I pulled into my driveway at 4:42, Linda's car was parked crooked across her side. The blue marks on the porch had softened after 2 nights of damp air, but all 3 were still visible. I sat behind the wheel for 1 minute. 14 missed calls, 5 messages, 1 house I had shared for 33 years. I went inside. Linda was standing in the living room, not sitting, not working, standing with both arms folded around herself and her phone in one hand. "14 calls," she said. "I counted. Monica said Dad authorized her to discuss his move with Brian and you, not me. He did not remove you as his emergency contact. That isn't the point. It may be exactly the point. You heard a boundary and translated it into rejection." She looked past me toward the porch. "Is he moving into Brookside tomorrow?" "For 30 days. You let him sign that alone? He was with Monica, Elena, and me. More important, he was with himself. He doesn't understand what happens after 30 days. He asked 8 questions. He read every page. He kept his apartment. And when he falls again? Then we respond to what happens. We do not use a possible fall to take every decision in advance." Linda's control cracked then. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. You think I wanted this? She said. You think I wanted to turn your den into a bedroom and coordinate overnight aids and spend every lunch break calling agencies? No. I think you wanted the outcome without risking that either of us would say no. Because you would have said no. You never asked? I remember your mother. So do I. I remember you sleeping 4 hours a night. I remember us arguing about money, privacy, medication, every stranger who came through this house. I remember the week after she died when you could barely speak to me. And you decided that meant I would refuse your father. I decided I could not watch you calculate whether he was worth doing it again. The sentence landed harder than anything she had said before. Worth it? She pressed both hands to her forehead. That is not what I meant. It is what you told him. You made my love for Frank conditional on a decision I never got to make. I told him you offered because he was humiliated. He thought none of us wanted him. Why did he think that? Brian said no. Brookside felt like giving him away. Dad kept saying he needed time and time was not making him safer. So you told me he had chosen Brookside. Because if I told you he was undecided, you would have delayed everything. And you told him I invited him here? Because if I told him I was arranging it, he would refuse out of pride. And you told Brian we had settled it. She did not answer. 3 people, I said, 3 different stories, all designed to keep one person from saying no to you. I was trying to keep Dad safe. You were trying to make safety happen without consent. Those sound very different when you say them like that. They are different. Her phone vibrated. She looked down. Frank Delaney. For a second, hope crossed her face, followed by fear. What did you tell him about me? She asked. The truth. The phone continued to ring. Tom, stay, please. I don't know what he is going to say. Neither do I. I picked up my truck keys from the table. Where are you going? To get the rest of his things ready for tomorrow. You're leaving me alone with this? I stopped at the front door. That was the old invitation, the one that asked me to absorb the discomfort so Linda would not have to face the person affected by her choices. I looked at her phone. Frank's name still filled the screen. That call is the first decision your father has made without you translating it, I said. Don't make him ring twice. Then I stepped onto the porch. The blue chalk line crossed beneath my shoe. Behind me, through the closed door, the ringing stopped. I did not know whether Linda had answered with an apology, an explanation, or another version designed to make the truth easier to hold. For once it was not my job to prepare the room for her answer. I drove to Frank's apartment but sat in the parking lot before going upstairs. Linda had loved me through layoffs, surgery, and my mother's decline. She had also learned to manage fear by managing people. I had learned to preserve peace by postponing resistance. Her control and my silence had not been opposites. They had been partners. Sunday morning I arrived at 7:58 with coffee. Brian came for the radio. Linda arrived at 8:17 because Frank, not I, had invited her. She carried the box marked Tom's Den. Frank had crossed out the label and written my radio beneath it. Linda set it down and faced her father. I'm sorry I canceled Brookside without permission. I'm sorry I told Tom you chose it, told you he invited you, and told Brian to stay out of it. Frank waited until she finished. I know what losing your mother did to you, he said, but I am not your mother. A plan can be kind and still be wrong when the person living it never agreed. Are you choosing Brookside because of me? She asked. No, I am trying Brookside because of me. That is what you have to learn to hear. We moved him at 10. He locked his apartment and kept the key in his own pocket. At Brookside, Brian placed the radio on the shelf and Linda plugged it in. Frank tuned in a baseball game, then gave us 3 boundaries. Brian would drive him on Tuesdays, Linda would attend appointments only when invited, and I would help compare his options after 2 weeks. It was not forgiveness. It was a workable beginning. That afternoon, Linda and I sat between the canceled ramp order and the unsigned care plan. I told her I would not decide a 33-year marriage with the same frightened speed she had used to plan Sunday. But the old arrangement was over. We would rebuild trust through choices both of us could verify, with counseling, or admit it was not returning. That night, rain washed the blue marks from the porch. By morning, the bricks looked the same. My marriage did not. 30 days later, after comparing Brookside with support in his apartment, Frank chose Brookside permanently. Linda sat beside him while he signed. When Monica asked whether the choice was his, Linda kept her hands folded and let her father answer. For years, my silence had allowed choices to be taken. Hers finally gave one back. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more stories about family, trust, and the ordinary details that reveal the truth. And tell me, does understanding the fear behind a lie make forgiveness easier, or does the lie still change everything?